right into these where we're at now as
Oh
far
yeah, well,
as
I totally agree with that. I think that I've said to you a million times. I think that when we are sensitive to human nature,
Mhm.
we tend to get things right. And when we're trying to fight against human nature, like a man can be a woman, things get fucked up. Because we
Mhm.
do at our core, at our essence, I think we all have a human nature. And I
Mhm.
think that that's why we're flawed. That's why we're sinful. That's why we're greedy. That's why we're, emotional. That there are certain things, and men have a tendency to be a certain way, and women have a tendency. That doesn't mean all men are like this or all women are like that. That means
Mhm.
generally speaking, men are going to hunt, men are going to protect, men are going
Yep.
to, and women are going to nurture. I mean, that's human
Mhm.
nature. And I think
Yep.
that when you see people talking about things that are consistent with human nature, they tend to make sense to me. And
Mhm.
when I hear people talking about things that are clearly against human nature, those things begin to not make sense to me. So I agree with you about nature. I agree with you about all the way back to cavemen, wherever. Go back a million years, go back 1,000 years. I think that
Mhm.
human nature is real,
Mhm. Well,
and
I'm
it's
interested in your opinion of homosexuality. So, if you said human nature, do you believe that uh, human nature has always included homosexual uh, behaviors?
yeah, yeah. I think that that's one of the most challenging conversations for me, and I've often wondered why. I don't know. I don't know a lot of gay guys. I know some. I've had some really good intimate conversations with a couple in my life because I was very curious. I don't believe I'm terribly judgmental. I think when I was younger, I was a little homophobic. I think most of us were that, the way we talked and stuff like that. And I think that I don't know the answer to the question, are you gay from birth or is that an acquired taste, for lack of a better phrase? I have no idea. And I don't want to say I don't care. The Catholic Church will tell you that homosexuality is a sin, but the Catholic Church will also tell you that everyone sins.
And the
So that's
Catholic
just,
Church has also, obviously, in recent history, been the biggest hypocrites when it comes to that particular topic. So, and especially with priest and child molester. Yeah,
no, those are
again, we're totally
those
off
are,
topic. I was going really back to, you said if it's all based on nature, then you have to bring that into it because that means that there was homosexual behavior as long as there's probably been humans, right? So how does that play
I
into?
believe so.
Yeah, yeah. So you
I
can't.
believe so. But I mean, pedophilia and homosexuality are two completely different things.
I realize that. That's why I don't want to talk about the Catholic Church. That's not
Well,
funny. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's true. And that's why when we start having these conversations about judgment of others or saying who is acceptable and who is not, often who sets those parameters is a faith-based organization, and that's
Well,
not
one of the things that I
unique
wrote
to the
about
Catholic
yesterday was
Church.
this word standing, and
Hmm.
and how do we get standing? Like a coach, for instance, will have standing at least until he, proves otherwise. If you join a team and you have a coach, that coach has standing. That's who you pay attention to. Whether he deserves that standing or not will play out over time. And I was talking about it in the context of how so many people that are trying to make progress professionally are granting standing to people that they shouldn't, like a human resources person or a hiring manager or someone who's going to tell you that they know the rules of how to find a job or they know the rules of what it is to become a leader. It's like we collectively give away our standing all the time. And I think that is kind of a little bit about what we're talking about here. You say in terms of judging people, everyone's judgmental.
Of
I
course.
I personally try very hard not to be, but I recognize that I am. And I think recognizing that I am and trying hard not to be might be the best I can do because
Mhm.
judgment is human nature, you
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah.
And so standing is interesting because I think that it's like toxic culture. It's like a toxic boss. It's like,
Mhm.
do you have a toxic boss or are you working still for a toxic boss? And why the fuck are you doing that? Like,
Yeah.
you're letting him be toxic, right? You see where I'm going with that particular train of thought?
Yeah,
It's,
let's just say like unconscious bias. It's part of the human brain. We all have them. It's just
mm-hmm.
back to what this podcast is originally the inception was about self-awareness and being aware of these things that are going on in our mind in
Well,
relationship
that's
to
why it's so interesting
other.
because there's so many nuances to it.
Yeah.
Like you asked me about homosexuality. I'm like, I almost anticipated I was supposed to give a black and white answer, and there isn't one for me. I don't know.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I don't
yeah. I
know.
think
I mean,
that's the nobody really knows. We're all. I'm just. Again, I was full disclosure. I'm interested, and this goes back to what was mentioned on the. But I shared the story of my experience going to a green build event or something, and how as Americans we've become these activists. It's this activist um, generation of people. And I'm not sure it's serving us very well right now. There's also, they're agitated and they're contentious.
you know what that
That's,
is, though, Jim? To me, it's like, and I agree totally. I think that this is a sense of belonging. People are seeking a sense of belonging to something, and they don't have anything to belong to.
Mhm.
So they'll grab onto the first thing that presents itself as, okay, well, these people will accept me if I just profess to believe in these things that don't necessarily make sense to me. But gosh, they got a lot of noise and a lot of momentum, and they're going to invite me in and I'll be one of them. And I just wear that color this and
Interesting.
that
I
color
see what you're
that. And it's
saying. It's
like
the human nature that
human
wants to
nature, that
be
belonging.
part of a
Yeah,
community or
that's
belonging,
right. That's why
people in
kids
common.
without
And
dads join gangs to
yeah,
find their dad, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
the standing.
yeah. Yeah, again, I don't know if we just had the episode or we're still trying looking for a topic. The topic that I was trying to um, craft or was I liked last week's about agency. Um, the concept of writing a book is an exercise, as it is much of an actual project, right? Going through the process of crafting your life story in relationship to um, a story that you want to tell. I think all men have a story in them. And I think as we get later in our years, we hope somebody will hear our story, or often we unconsciously hope that somebody will tell our story, and that would show your contribution or significance
Yeah,
while you were here. I think that's a
your
human
contribution. Yeah, yeah.
contribution. I think it's specific to a man.
Do you?
Uh, well, that's no, yeah. I'll explain why. Specifically to a man, I'm not comparing one or the other. I think all humans want that to some degree. I think women by nature can get that through uh, a child, a community, a group, their tribe. I think women are better at it, um, of participating in day-to-day activities where they feel they can do that as a community when men are more isolated. And this could go back to the hunter gathering um,
Yeah,
traits that we have.
it's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's that's valid. With the context you just shared, I think that's valid. I didn't disagree with every man has a story, but I didn't realize that it might be more of a male thing than a female thing. And I'd be willing to listen to that argument as well. But yeah, to your point, I think that does go back to human nature. Doesn't mean
Mhm.
we're right about it. Doesn't mean that maybe if you said that in front of a woman, she'd say, "No, man, every woman I know wants to write a book too." Maybe not. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, again, there's some ego. There may be some ego. I just think men. do things in silence. That's more of our nature, to do things in silence and hope
Yeah.
that we're rewarded in ways. Again, this is not judgment or comparison. That's why it's called the Imperfect Men's Club. It's a podcast about men, um, and we have these kind of types of conversations. This is not a competition, right? This is
I think
a
the
conversation.
proving your point, I think, is that, when I was apparently, my daughter just said this to me again the other day. And my girlfriend says it to me all the time. I'm very sensitive.
Mm.
And, but they say that positively,
Hmm.
like, you're not a pussy, but you're very sensitive. You have a nice balance of masculine and empathetic, and I kind of feel like that wasn't a learned skill. I kind of feel like I was born that way, and because if I go back to as far back as I can remember, I was always teased about that. That was always something that people, and most of the people that teased me about it were jealous of me, that I had it, because I could tackle you and fight with you,
Had what? Your sensitivity,
that emotional capacity.
emotional
And
capacity of being sensitive.
I wasn't alone in my thoughts. I shared my thoughts. I wore my emotions on my sleeve, and that was not what men did. And that was my point.
And your point was that your sensitivity, and that others were jealous because of your sensitivity.
Or something else, and
Oh,
that
I
was
see.
just
Okay.
that was easily something that was convenient to. Hey, don't stop being such a pussy. What are you crying for? What are you being a girl for? You know. And to
Hmm.
your point, it's like men process stuff on their own, alone. I didn't, and I benefited from that, but I was also hurt by that. It was because everything's like that, right? You benefit from the same thing you benefit from is the thing that hurts you as well sometimes. So
Yeah,
I
Mark, I
think
think
it
the word sensitivity and a man is probably a worthy conversation, because particularly our generation or our time. And by the way, I'm not suggesting we go we change it. I don't. I think men. There's nothing wrong with being sensitive, but to be so sensitive, you're not functional, or you're, again, you become this warrior of the world to take on everything. That's a sign of weakness. So
it is.
sensitivity
No,
and weakness is two different things.
totally,
I
totally.
had a conversation recently. I think I shared this with you. That I was getting dinner, and it was at a local um, restaurant and bar, and so I had this gal was next to me, and started talking to her. She's in real estate or something, and she made the comment about, oh, it's that, don't be so sensitive, or don't take it so personal. Just kind of in talking, kind of playing around. And I said, I take everything personal. She goes, you do? I go, yeah, I take everything personal. She goes, I don't. And then I thought, first thing I thought is, yeah, that's why you're in real estate. And
Or
you're,
you probably thought to yourself, well, let's put that to the test right now.
yeah, yeah. And I think she had a couple before I got there. So
Yeah.
this conversation went from just a friendly conversation to almost confrontational, because um, she says, oh, she was saying something. I want to go to Europe, and I said, yeah, she goes, you've been there? I go, yeah, I've been there a couple of times. I go, hey, look, if you really want to do that, give me your phone, and I'll book a ticket for you right now. And then all of a sudden she got flipped, and she says, uh, by the way, you should not be giving 40-year-old women advice, or something like that. And I go, well, first of all, I'm married, so I'm not, you got the wrong impression. I was not like trying to hit on you, so you just assumed that, but I wasn't. And and then she, yeah, it was a awkward conversation. Obviously she was single, and not particularly attractive, but you get the gist of it, right? I said, no wonder I'm thinking to myself, no wonder you don't have anybody, a relationship, because Yeah, you don't take anything personal because you're not sensitive. You don't care about people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm sorry for the tangent on that. But it was the word sensitivity is a worthy conversation, especially I think as we get older, because I do believe we soften up for good later on, right?
I think some of us do and some of us don't. Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe to your point, Mark, maybe
Yeah.
some harden up.
Yeah. No question. Well, it's just the bitter better thing. It's another form of the bitter better thing, you know?
It is, yeah, and maybe harden is not the right description at later.
Well,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm,
yeah, yeah. Maybe some of us get flaccid. Is that the point?
the
Knock
word
on
harden
wood,
and
I have
age don't
not
always go
encountered that
together.
challenge as of yet.
Yeah, fortunately that doesn't appear to be our problems. But anyway, back to
No,
the
dude, I think sensitivity is a great topic.
um,
I think it's a great topic.
yeah, but yeah, I don't if you're not taking again, it's all in context, right? But I think to be good at anything, you have to be sensitive to uh, the results and how people are responding in order to achieve that. This is another topic that
Uh,
often comes
yeah.
up, and you've heard me say this before. It came up recently. Uh, I would rather be respected than liked, but
Hmm.
if so, and there is a difference, right? Some people want to just be liked,
Hmm.
and they're willing to give up the discomfort of somebody not liking them in the hopes to be liked more um, than trusted. It
Yeah,
actually
it's
comes from a book. It's better to be
feared.
feared than liked.
Yeah, I think that's Lee Iacocca or something like
Is
that.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's funny. I was out to eat on Friday, and I went into the men's room, and there was a quote on the wall, quote of Al Capone quote, and it was about weakness. And he said, "Don't mistake my kindness for weakness."
Mm,
He said, I am often kind to people that are deserving of my kindness, but if you mistake my kindness for weakness, weak is not the thing that you will remember about me.
that's good. That was an Al Capone
Al
quote.
Capone.
That's strong. Yeah.
So no, I think I think you hit the nail on the head with the word function. It's not okay to be so sensitive that you can't function.
Hmm.
It's okay to be sensitive as long as it doesn't impair your ability to function. Because at the end of the day, you got to get going. You got to get going again. You got to get back up. You got to restart. You got to start over. You got to get to the store. You got to pick the kid up. You got to, take the wife out for dinner. You got to function, you know.
Hmm.
And if you're wallowing in your own sensitivity, that doesn't do anyone any good at all.
Yeah, I do think that you can get to a point where you just freeze, and when you are not able to function because you're hypersensitive. Hypersensitivity is a whole other handicap of being your best self, your best version of yourself, because you're overthinking things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, I think that, I think what's interesting kind of just popped into my head is I'm very conscious and I guess self-aware of my evolution from my teenage years to my married years, running just on a treadmill, making a lot of money, not really paying attention to what's going on around me, just trying to make more money and be a father and a husband and all those other things. And then all of a sudden, boom. And then it's like, okay, you got to be a single dad and take care of two daughters and a son. And that becomes a whole nother adjustment, right? Which is, I got to get better at listening. I got to actually be a mom and a dad. I have to become more sensitive than I am. I have no choice because the only choice I have is to lose my relationship with my two daughters, maybe my three children altogether.
mhm.
And then but I was dipping back into a well that already existed. I was already sensitive. I just needed to become a little bit more in my own mind aware of my circumstances. I started hearing things from coaches and teachers like, Mark, you can't talk like that. You can't say those things, you know, or how do you get away with saying those things? And I would be interpreted as not being sensitive, but that same person later on would compliment me for how sensitive I was. And it was a little confusing for a while. So I
Mhm.
thought, I'm going to seek out my own identity. I'm paying too much attention to what other people, because this is confusing to me. And then I, you know, and then I just started, and I've also watched you in 5 years
Mhm.
evolve.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not attributing that to anything. I could guess because you've shared a lot with me, but part of it's just getting older. Part of it is your role as a father evolves, your role as a husband evolves, your wife retiring, you know, you're wrestling with your own challenges with depression and concussions, you
Mhm.
know, certain things going well, certain things not going so well at any given time.
Mhm.
I mean, a good human is going to evolve because those are all circumstances that would promote evolution as opposed to stagnation, which is your other choice, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Misery,
exactly. This is a good,
isolation, and misery,
yeah,
right?
and as you said, going back to that quote, that we grow bitter or we grow better.
Yeah.
It's a decision. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what's something that you said earlier too reminds me of this quote, and I'm sure you've heard me say it before. It says, "We are all actors in the theater of life. He who plays the best role and wears the best mask wins." Um, there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that, and when you were mentioning uh, different stages of your life, different roles, because we do play different roles at different
Mm-hmm.
stages. Um, and that's just adapting to the environment or whatever we're doing. But yeah, I like this quote because every time I read it, every time I say it, it can mean something different.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's another interesting topic is how the same thing can be very different meaning depending on where you are in your life.
Yep,
Have you
exactly.
ever have you ever experienced a state of like almost being out of your own body, meditative state of being like floating above yourself and kind of looking down at yourself or anything close to that?
Appreciate the question because I've got close to being there, but not there. Again, it's a meditation state. Some feel it's a hypnosis. You can be hypnotized and get to that state, and that
Yep. Yep.
a few times, but not as much as I'd like. I think it's probably why people do go and have meditation retreats, right? Go to a different country or even take psychedelic drugs to
Yeah,
get to that.
ayahuasca or mushrooms or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The reason I ask is because I was because of the topic we're on first, and secondarily, last night Shayla and I went to a sound event, and it was this guy who, by profession, was a PhD in chemistry,
Hmm.
and he's sitting in this small room where everyone's on a yoga mat. There was about 10 or 15 of us, and he's playing all these different bowls and gongs and instruments, and the ceremony itself, which was organized by one of Shayla's good friends who's an acupuncturist who's married to a special forces Navy guy that I really enjoy. Interesting people, just
Hmm.
combinations.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
And lying on a floor for 55 minutes and doing nothing but experiencing the sound.
Mm.
And then whatever else comes. And the reason I ask is that I had probably four different really vivid experiences about things that were, I think most of them were very unsettling. I remembered myself failing at something as a teenager. I remembered the day that I was taken from my home from by the police, and a couple other instances. It's like dreaming. I don't remember the other
Interesting.
two or three. I just
Your brain goes back in time and pulls those
oh
emotions right
man, you talk
into the
about being
current moment.
sensitive. Holy shit.
Did you
But
feel
my
better or
point,
worse
my
when you were done?
my
Like
my
did you say I like that, I want to go do it again, or did you go, I'm not sure I want to go back to those places? What was
It's
your
the
overall?
second time I did it with the same guy in the same room with the same people. And the first time I had a completely different experience that was more positive, but no less enlightening, you
Mhm.
know? And one of the reasons I brought it up is because I was thinking when I left there last night, I have a handful of friends that I think I'm going to recommend looking into this, and you're one of them. And
Yeah,
particularly,
again, I've played around with that a few times. Like you said, you've got to be in the right state of mind to even
you just don't.
partake.
It's a crap shoot
Yeah,
when you walk in because you might think you know what frame of mind you're in, but you don't.
yeah.
And it also depends on the person that's running the show. Like,
Oh,
is he
totally.
gonna bang that gong or is he gonna hang out with this gong? You know, he's got like this
Yeah,
whole. I mean, he had a van full of equipment, and I've seen these people before. Many of them they do this secondary to what they do primarily because it's so fascinating for them. But it's a fucking ordeal. Like, it probably
yeah,
took this guy 2 hours to get this shit back in his van. You
yeah.
know.
Well, just to support what you're saying, Mark, or at least validate what you're saying, there's no mystery that some of the greatest uh, inventions and companies have come from people that are not. Steve Jobs has the probably the most documented story that he was really into those Eastern ways
Hmm.
and those kind of things, even psychedelics. And look what we have, right?
Hmm.
He went to that place, he got away, then he came back and built for the number one really company in the world right now, Apple.
I've
So
had I've been pretty intellectually or spiritually, I should say, curious my whole life, and I've had this experience in a handful of different mediums. I've had it in a yoga studio. I've had it in church. I've had it in just closing my eyes outside in a field, pausing after a long run. I've had it in a bunch of different places, and this one just left an impression on me, and I made a point last night, independent of what we were going to talk about today, to just mention it to you because
yeah, that's great.
I do
Yeah.
think it has to do with the credibility of the person doing it because you could probably get, you know, I don't know what percentage of people that do this don't know what they're doing, but I would imagine it's like any other profession. It's only a small percentage of people that really are in tune with what they're doing. So I would be
Yeah,
wary.
and that also supports, I think, the breath work that you do and
Hmm.
some other things. I know the breath work is, yeah, this is not hocus pocus stuff. There's some real science in relationship to brain function and breathing. So
Well,
if
you know what's interesting, and I think we might have an episode as soon as we stop talking. So I think that, and that's fine. To me, because I remember, I think I've told you about back in years ago when I went looking for a church and what I was looking for. Same thing as I was looking for a yoga studio. For me, the yoga teacher that I had when I experienced this thing was my favorite yoga teacher. The priest that took my confession was my favorite priest. This guy that did his work last night, it's only my second time with him, but I found him immediately in the first time to be kind, gentle, thoughtful, well meaning, well intentioned. And he knew what the hell he was doing. And then on top of it, as a PhD in chemistry, he's kind of smart too. So he has a non spiritual credential on top of
interesting.
a spiritual. So I think I've luckily found a couple of people that were like, I don't know if I would have had this experience with another person just as credentialed that did not resonate with me.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I said, anytime you have science that backs up the other stuff, it does give some credibility. That I'll share a few quotes I have just because they came up as we were talking, and we'll wrap up this episode. So a couple ones because related to Steve Jobs. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That was the Steve Jobs quote. Don't
Mm-hmm.
become addicted to your own struggles. That speaks to being the
Yep.
sensitivity when your question about being oversensitivity. I do think you can get in your own head. There's a lot to say for that. That you can't get at you can get so into your own head that you become addicted to your own struggles. That is a real thing. That if you don't have self awareness, uh, can override your goals and dreams. Everything is hard, and if it's not hard, you're not trying hard enough. That
Yep.
may came from your dad or something like that, right?
It's, I mean, all of those things. I mean, it's the cool thing about wisdom, right?
Yeah.
Wisdom is wisdom, and you can say it in different ways. But yeah, I think that, one of the things that in the spirit of sensitivity, because I think we'll look back on this conversation saying, I'm glad we hit record. At least I feel that way right now without listening to it. Hopefully I'll be proven correct. Otherwise we'll have to do it again. But I
This may
think that
require some editing.
one of the things and I think it was to, if I went back to your first quote about jobs, about going far and what was the other option? If you want to go fast, go
Yeah,
alone. If you want to go
yeah, what
far,
he's saying, I think we all know to get to a certain point. I'll read it again here.
can't do it alone.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want
Yep.
to go far, go together. Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've both been fortunate to have experienced and grateful that I had the wherewithal to welcome it is really good friends that don't let me get away with shit. And it goes back to that conversation we had about the difference between being nice and being kind. And I think that, my I got one good friend that will tease the shit out of me about being sensitive, but he's also one of my best friends because he'll also tell me how much he loves me and respects me and values our friendship and all that. I think you really life gets a lot easier when you spend a lot of time with people that both love you and support you, but don't kiss your ass and tell you what the truth is. And I think it's also human nature, I think, to shy away from that because that's scary. Like, you tell me I'm wrong, you disagree with me on a pretty regular basis. And I think that's part of our charm, you know?
Yeah. Although I heard something the other day and it validated what I already knew, unfortunately found out for myself. Some of the worst advice you can get is actually from your friends and family. Um,
Yeah.
and I say that in the most respectful way, but that is absolutely I can
Yeah, no,
remember
I think
specifically because they don't have perspective. Um,
But
yeah.
I think if you get and I agree with that. So I'm not in conflict with that. But what I'm saying is that we also do have, like, I know a couple of people I can go to if I want to hear how wonderful I am, right? But it's false. It's not whether it could be true, but it's not meaningful, right? They're not saying it because they believe it. They're saying it to make me feel better about myself. So yes, you can get really bad advice. Like my father, I told you when I started my own company, he thought I was insane. He's
Mhm.
like, don't do that. You're working for a big company. You're making a lot of money. You got benefits. You got security. I'm like, I don't need the benefits. I don't have any kids yet. I don't believe in job security. You don't know what you're talking about. You work for the same company for 35 years. So I had the ability to take an opinion from someone who I cherish and say, I don't agree with you. Thank you for your opinion. So I think you got to be able to do both. Recognizing that people close to you can give you bad advice is clearly important, but those same people can also tell you you're full of shit, and I think that's
Yeah.
valuable.